So I genuinely had a script ready to go for the first time in ever, all about Kendrick and my expectations for Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. And I was gonna record sometime this week, and then Kendrick dropped a whole ass single, the 5th installment in his The Heart series of tracks. And I would love to make this video all refined and sexy, but the album drops on Friday. It's Monday when I'm recording this, and I really just need to get out every single thought in my head about the track right now. So we're doing a cute little audio only episode that will definitely be a mess, but oh well. So let's talk about The Heart Part 5. Firstly, let's talk about the personal. Kendrick is infamous for filling his songs with the kinds of personal journeys and stories which only he can, and that's no different on The Heart Part 5. His introductory bars here are self-referential ones, talking about his environment in Compton, of drugs, sex, and violence, and ultimately summarizing that environment neatly as Kendrick's personal culture. The second verse doubles down on the negatives of Kendrick's culture, leading to a moment when he rejects it entirely, saying we shouldn't even call it culture because that normalizes it to an extent. And verse 3 becomes, removed from the figure of Nipsey Hussle, who we are going to touch on in just a second, a narrative about someone who died at the hands of the culture of violence and depravity that Kendrick was born out of. Notably, Kendrick is the one filling in this perspective, and we should remember that on Damn, Kendrick was killed in the album's narrative. While it was only a symbol for where he'd end up no matter which path he chose, one of cruel wickedness or selfless weakness, it was a death nonetheless. And so we can read this verse in the personal sense as Kendrick meditating on his own death, one which obviously hasn't come, but is a personal experience for Kendrick regardless, who has already visualized his death at the hands of gun violence as caused by choosing the path of weakness. So this is a very personal song, but it's also a track which comments heavily on the Black experience, and this is the second layer to the track I wanted to discuss. The culture Kendrick speaks on is one very much linked to the Black community. Centuries of wealth disparity and systemic racism have placed many Black persons in the culture of violence around which Kendrick grew up. And when he speaks here, it becomes reflective at points of other Black figures throughout history. Most notably, it's Nipsey Hussle in the final verse, but it's also Kanye and Kobe and OJ, and a never-ending list of Black figures. The music video may have highlighted a few in particular, but in their drastic differences, those figures mostly serve to represent the full scope of the Black community to which Kendrick is trying to speak. Kendrick hones in on very specific experiences which might only relate to a select few, but he also touches on extremely broad topics like his skin color, for instance, and racism, and this connects him to the wider Black community of which he is a part. This entire song was released with a simple phrase attached to it: I am all of us. And in this line, we can see Kendrick becoming a vessel through which the entire Black experience is processed. He is all of us, the us referring to the Black community. But it goes even further than that. Kendrick here, outside of himself, outside of his community, outside of even his identity as a Black person, is acting as a vessel for the entire human race. Kendrick's first ever studio song, aptly titled Fuck Your Ethnicity, set out an objective in Kendrick from day one to surpass any superficial bounds or labels, and speak to an experience which is profoundly human above all else. And through this, we can come to see Kendrick here as not just discussing his personal culture or Black culture, but the culture of everyone. The things Kendrick is talking about here, pain and violence and trying desperately to lift others out of the dangerous world they're forced to live within, all transcend bounds, especially in an era as chaotic and violent as our present. The entire world is divided, constantly perpetuating an existence of pain no matter how much people try to fight against it. Kendrick's life has been defined by personal experiences and by experiences as a Black person, specifically a Black person in America, but he has also, as we all have, been defined by universal experiences and emotions. And that's what I feel like this song is talking about, especially with that tagline. Kendrick exists as he does, naturally, and that's where we get the I am from, and all of us exist just like he does. Meld the phrases together and the messaging becomes clear. Kendrick, through living as a human being, is channeling every other person doing the same. When he speaks to the entire population. And I wouldn't say this is as much a shift for Kendrick as it is an acknowledgement. Good Kid, Mad City was about Kendrick growing up in Compton, but it also spoke to growing up Black in general, and beyond even that, it's an album about youth and finding yourself through that youth, a universal idea. Same goes for Tapab, a record commenting on the Black experience through the figure of Kendrick, but also one discussing self-love and becoming a leader for others, again, universal experiences. And even though Damn was Kendrick's most personal and introspective record by far, there were, again, heavy themes of what it means to be a Black person in America today. And past that, the entire album is framed as a conflict between wickedness and weakness, a human struggle so old that it's biblical to discuss. So yeah, this song isn't quite some reinvention for Kendrick. In fact, from the first line, he pulls listeners back into similar subject matter to what he's been talking about for years. But the genius is in the details. When he raps, "I come from a generation of pain," it's simultaneously speaking to his personal life, his racial life, and his core life of general humanity. And when he drops lines about getting locked up and having all your friends sleep with your baby mama, it seems very specific to Kendrick's life, and it is, but it also nods to wider Black experiences of mass incarceration, and even wider human experiences of restriction, oppression, jealousy. Kendrick says he is all of us because all of us can get something out of his music, no matter where we come from or the life we lead. Through Kendrick's work, we can pull valuable lessons that are unique to us. Don't forget that the song begins with Kendrick talking about his fans and his dedication to and appreciation for them. He goes so far as to call them all his people. And if that means something differently to you than it does to me, good. That's what Kendrick has intended. I'm a white woman, but I can't tell you how much in Kendrick's music I found and adapted into my own personal life. And this takes us all the way back to the first lines of the song, where Kendrick says, "I realize life is perspective, and my perspective may differ from yours." Every single person on this earth comes with a different perspective. Some good, some bad, some in the middle, but it's through those perspectives that we grow and live. Life is perspective, both our personal perspective and how the perspectives of others shape us, how we take lessons from others and are able to tie them back into our personal lives. We live through others, and in that way, we are all one. The human experience is one that translates amongst all. We have learned lessons from Kendrick, but he also admits that he's learned lessons from us. Whatever he says on his next album, no matter how personal or broad it is, there will surely be something there for all people to pull from because it's all been pulled from other people. Life is an endless cycle of perspectives. To reference the hook here, Kendrick wants us, no matter how we might come to him, but he wants us to want him too, to be ready to embrace his message of unity. And that's ultimately what this track stands for. A reminder before we venture into Kendrick's newest album that when he speaks, it is to all people. And those are just my loose thoughts, really. I expect that my perspective will shift after Mr. Morale officially drops, but for now, with only a few listens of the track to go off of, that's how I'm feeling. Please, please, please comment if you have any alternative interpretations. I'd love to hear them, and I think a song like this will be talked about for years, so there's obviously a wealth of interpretations to draw on. I didn't even get to dive into the music video or the sample that the song uses, so there's much more to cover beyond even what I discussed here. Until next time, which might honestly be a decade if this Kendrick album is as dense as I'm expecting, bye.